Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 8 4 key game picks. Before we get into Week 8 picks, very quick thoughts from a crazy week number 7. And what I mean by crazy is, if any of you saw a lot of the NFL games that went on in week number 7, it was just pure madness, from crazy plays to gutsy plays and all. And let's break it down a little bit here. You had the Titans going for a 2-point conversion late in the game that would have they tried to beat the Chargers late in the game in London, and then they ended up not getting that. Plus, you got an almost game-tying touchdown in the end between the Patriots and the Bears. The Bears almost tied the game, but they were stopped short of the goal line, which was unbelievable. Then you got Ravens kicker Tucker missing a game-tying extra point that gave the Saints the victory. And then you got controversy between the Cowboys. You got the Cowboys and Redskins controversy over an illegal ball movement that created a possibly encroachment, which really ended up being some of a false start for the Cowboys. And they missed the game. They missed the game time field goal in the end. It was just pure madness. I've never seen anything like it. Possibly one of the weirdest finishes I've ever seen in a regular season in the NFL. But two obvious things that really none of us should have been surprised here is, of course, the dominance still so far in the league between the Chiefs and the Rams. Both teams still strong. Rams are still undefeated, which was not a surprise in the beating a very beat up 49ers team. And the Chiefs just dismantled the Bengals, and that really puts a ton of pressure now on the Bengals now, with Pittsburgh only far behind them. It's really just coming down. Look, we're already near the halfway point of the NFL season, and it could not be any more interesting than it already is right now. Now, so far as playoff seedings and all that, it's too early to tell right now. And it's really right now hard to say who is going to really be the elites in this NFL season. Anyways, that was pretty much short and sweet here, and obviously I want to quickly, probably the only thing that came out of mind was definitely that controversy between the Redskins and the Cowboys. Now, I personally didn't think, I'm not a Cowboys fan by any means. I personally thought that, I think the Cowboys did get screwed in that game. They should have tied that game up. But then again, I don't know if that it was basically, I think, a 45 yard field goal, which basically turned into a 48, 49, 50 yard field goal. I don't know if he would have made it the first time, though, if that play would have stood, because he missed it the second time, and it barely hit the upright. I personally think the Cowboys got robbed in that game. I don't know about you guys, but I think look, I'm not a Cowboys fan by any means, but I kind of agree with a lot of people that, yeah, I think the Cowboys got screwed in that game. But unfortunately, it is what it is. The Cowboys really have to make up for it now, and they really got. Their schedule's not going to get that much easier coming up very soon. And as far as any other ways of concerns right now in the NFL, really, will we see the Chiefs and the Rams sort of finally get into a demise? I don't know. It's tough to say. The Rams actually got a much tougher schedule coming up. And remember, they do meet the Chiefs very soon as well in a critical Monday night game coming up very soon. Anyways, let's talk about week number 8, shall we? All right, beginning with key game number 1, it is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. A must-win game for both these teams. The defending champion Eagles coming off a gut-wrenching loss last week to the Panthers. It was just Philly really looked like they pretty much dominated the first half in their game against Carolina, and then in the second half, basically, it almost like their defense just basically got ran over by a truck. If we look at Wentz's stats in that game, 30 of 37, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, despite all that, he played very well, but just that Philly's defense really let them down in the second half of that game. Now, Jacksonville, they got huge quarterback problems. Compare the stats for both Kessler and Bortles. Now, Bortles was benched in that game last week against the Texans in a total embarrassing loss at home. He only went 6 of 12, 61 yards, no touchdowns or interceptions. And Kessler went 21 of 30, 156 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Both sides of the ball, Jacksonville's got a ton of problems. I thought they looked like they were going to be an elite team. They starting to become the old Jaguars, where they just can't seem to win, or they're just really in a rebuilding mode. And there's no question right now, Bortles' time is almost up if he doesn't turn this thing around fast. Now, the Eagles are a 3-point favorite in this one, and also keep in mind that this game is in London, too. The third and final London game of the year. It is really tough to say who comes out of this game, because both these teams desperately need a win here. Jacksonville needs it more than the Eagles do, because Jacksonville knows they got the Texans well ahead of them, and they're trying to keep pace with them. But if I had to look at both ways, if Jacksonville's offense just can't seem to get any points going, I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles here. Though they will turn it around here. Is this game going to be close? It might be a close game, but I think the Eagles will pull away in the second half if their defense doesn't struggle. And really, the problem is on both sides of the ball, Jacksonville's defense really is just broken down. They do have some injuries, that's one thing. And I don't know how long Bortles is going to be the quarterback for Jacksonville. They got problems big time on both sides of the ball. And that is why, I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles here. I think they pick up the victory here, and Jacksonville's going to be in an even more tougher spot now, further behind in the standings, and pretty much may be out of playoff contention if they don't turn this thing around soon. And as for the Eagles, they get a win here. They keep pace with Washington. The Redskins are still in first place. Anyways, for this game, I got to go with the Eagles here. Eagles over the Jaguars. All right, key game number 2, the Miami Dolphins versus the Houston Texans. And speaking of the first game that I talked about, this kind of plays a role here in the second game, mostly to the Texans here. Now, the Texans are a 7-point favorite in this one. Watson and the offense has finally turned things around here, and they really just, like I said earlier, they manhandled Jacksonville in that game. And they're going to have their hands full. I think this Thursday night game is going to be pretty good. Now, Osweiler went 22 of 31, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, even though they lost to the Lions. But in a game like this, I don't know if Osweiler is going to remain the quarterback here. If he starts to struggle in this game, where do they go back to Tannehill? Now, really, I think it's more Miami's defense really just needs to get off the field, because they were on the field a lot in that game against the Lions, and they really, really wear them out in that game. And who's to say that if Watson and their offense can do the same thing to the Miami defense as well? Now, Watson in the big win last week, 12 of 24, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interception. So he didn't really play his stats really didn't seem to be much of a factor, because really Houston's defense was really key in that game against Jacksonville. Texans, again, as I said, they're a 7-point favorite in this one. That number should be a little bit lower than that, probably maybe 5 or 4, but they have it at 7 points for the time being. That number could change towards kickoff. Tough game to pick here on Thursday night here. It should be a good one, but I really think the Texans get the victory here. They're on a roll. They're at home, and if Osweiler starts to struggle again in this game, and there's no question they could go to Tannehill big time. But I like Houston in this game. I think the Texans get the victory here. Should be a good one, but I'm going with the Texans here. Texans over the Dolphins. Key game number 3, a very, very big game here. It should be a very good game here. I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers versus the LA Rams. Rams are still undefeated. They are a 9-point favorite in this one. I think that number should be lower. Now, this is really, I think to me the Rams are going to get put to the test here, because let's see how well the Rams defense plays against Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron Rodgers, the Packers are coming off a bye week. In their come from behind win last week, 2 weeks ago against the 49ers, Rodgers went 25 of 46, 425 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Now, Goff in the big win over the 49ers, 18 of 24, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. This game is going to be a shootout. There's no question about it. And I think the Rams defense are going to get put to the test here against Aaron Rodgers. You got to be able to put Aaron Rodgers down, or otherwise they're going to score points here. This game, I think, is going to be a shootout. It's going to be a shootout all the way. No question this game will go back and forth here. And it's going to really test the Rams defense here. The Rams defense has been credited a lot this season, but I think to me this is where they're going to run into a big-time test here against Aaron Rodgers here. Should be a good one here. Expect a close game here. But the key to this game for the Rams here, they got to get to Aaron Rodgers. I think they do late in the game, just like they did with the Vikings here. I think when they got to Kirk Cousins late in the game, I think to me, getting to Aaron Rodgers in the second half, making sure he doesn't provide points here, I think is going to be key for them, for the Rams to win this game. And I like the Rams in this one, and it's going to be a very, very close game here. But I think the Rams pull it out with a very, very slim victory, probably by 3 points. This is going to be a good game here, and I'll definitely be watching this game as well. I like the Rams in this one. It's going to be close. Rams over the Packers. And finally, key game number 4, another big one. The New Orleans Saints versus the Minnesota Vikings, a rematch of the craziest divisional playoff game last season, where Diggs, on a prayer, basically a prayer Hail Mary, that ended up winning the game for the Vikings. Now, going into this game, both teams are in first place in their respective divisions. Breeze and basically a surviving win against the Ravens last week. He went 22 of 30, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Now, Kirk Cousins, in a big win last week against the Jets, he went 25 of 40, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Is this another? Could we see another shootout in this game? I think so. Minnesota's defense, excuse me for that. Minnesota's defense really has been put to the test this year. They're not as good as they were last year, and the Saints kind of know it with their high-powered offense here. I think this game's going to go back and forth here. Now, the Vikings are a very slight favorite in this one at 1.5. I agree with that. I think it's going to come down between Cousins and Breeze. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout here in this game, just like the Rams and Green Bay I think is going to be. I think the Vikings and Saints game is definitely going to be a shootout here. This game could go either way. Hard to say who comes out there. Basically, both their teams' defense here have got to come up big in this game. And who do I like winning in this game? I think, to me, the Minnesota Vikings, especially because they're at home here. They have the home field advantage here. The Saints will really make this a game, but I think Minnesota pulls it out by a field goal here. I think it's going to be a very, very close game between the Vikings and the Saints, and I like the Vikings in this one, but in a very, 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 very close game here. Vikings over the Saints. All right, everybody, that wraps up my picks for week number 8. For my entire week 8 picks, please check the description below, and I will see you guys next week when I talk about my picks for week number 9. We're nearing the halfway point of the NFL season. I'll see you guys next week. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.